Up next in the broadcast, the prisoner swap deal between Jordan and the Islamic State appears to have fallen apart as a new video shows IS burning a Jordanian pilot alive, while Jordan reportedly executes 2 IS-related prisoners. The defense ministers of South Korea and China meet for talks in Seoul to discuss countermeasures to threats from North Korea and ways for Beijing to pressure Pyongyang to end its nuclear program. And North Korea says it's no longer interested in engaging in talks with the United States. Meanwhile, Seoul says it will push for dialogue with Pyongyang regardless of the regime's heightening tensions with Washington. Primetime News begins now.
Welcome to the program. You're watching Primetime News live from Seoul. I am Kang Chiri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with the high-level defense coordination underway between Seoul and Beijing. China's defense minister met with his Korean counterpart in Seoul today to discuss ways to better deal with North Korea.
The results, they agreed to speed up the process to install a military hotline, putting these two ministers just a call away in a state of emergency. Our Kim Hyun-bin has more.
Military and nuclear threats from Pyongyang were at the top of discussions between Chinese Defense Minister Chang Wan-chan and his South Korean counterpart Han Min-gu in Seoul on this Wednesday. South Korea's defense ministry says that two countries agreed to expand bilateral cooperation on dealing with the communist regime. During talks, Mr. Han urged for Beijing to put more pressure on Pyongyang to end its nuclear program. To address the North's continued provocations affecting regional security, the two sides also discussed establishing a direct military hotline with one another, a move that would allow Seoul and Beijing to act promptly in case of a serious threat from the North. In addition, an agreement was made to hold working-level talks on the matter starting next week, with an aim to open the hotline within the year. South Korea and China have had hotlines between their navies and air forces since 2008. But a proposal to set one up between their defense ministries, dating back to 2007, was put off as China was hesitant to risk its relations with the North. This communication channel is widely expected to not only enhance security on the Korean peninsula, but also increase the pressure on Pyongyang. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korea says there's no longer a need for the regime to hold talks with the United States. The latest statement out of Pyongyang comes a matter of days after its invitation to a top U.S. diplomat was rejected by Washington. Our Hwang Sang-hee has the details.
North Korea has officially stated that it no longer intends to engage with the United States. In a statement released Wednesday, the National Defense Commission said the North Koreans are not willing to sit at the negotiating table with Washington when the latter seeks to bring it down. The commission, which is the regime's most powerful ruling body, is referring to a remark made by U.S. President Barack Obama in a recent YouTube interview.
And it is very hard to sustain that kind of brutal authoritarian regime in this modern world. Over time, you will see a regime like this collapse.
The commission went on to warn that the U.S. hostilities will be met with a just counteraction focused on inflicting the bitterest disasters upon the United States. North Korea may find itself cornered after the U.S. turned down a number of its offers. Pyongyang said last month that it was willing to suspend nuclear testing if joint military drills between the U.S. and South Korea were halted, an offer flatly rejected by Washington. North Korea invited Chief U.S. Envoy for North Korea Policy Sang Kim to Pyongyang last week, only to be turned down again. While the regime blames Washington for the current deadlock in dialogue, the U.S. has continuously insisted it remains open to talks. It says the only condition for resuming dialogue is for the North to demonstrate a willingness to give up its nuclear ambitions. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea says inter-Korean dialogue and the ongoing friction between the United States and North Korea will be dealt with as two separate issues. The Unification Ministry said Wednesday that Seoul will push for dialogue with Pyongyang regardless of the regime's heightening tensions with Washington, sticking to its basic stance of building trust with the North through dialogue and cooperation. Seoul made an offer for dialogue in late December, but has yet to get a response from Pyongyang. Instead, the regime has criticized what it called South Korea's double standard in an editorial piece in its latest state-run newspaper for calling for dialogue on one hand and carrying out military drills with the United States on the other.
And South Korea will extend its diplomatic drive over on the other side of the globe. Top reps from South Korea and the United States are set to hold talks this weekend in Germany. Seoul's foreign ministry says South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will meet with his U.S. counterpart John Kerry on Saturday on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. It will mark the first ministerial talks between the two allies this year, following a series of senior-level bilateral meetings. The two officials are widely expected to reaffirm their close coordination on tackling North Korea's nuclear ambitions and discuss ways to bring the North back to the discussion table. Back here in the nation, constitutional reform, once a hot presidential election topic, has faded a bit due to overshadowing concerns about the economy and security issues. But the opposition camp wants to revive the issue, and it has set its own deadline to bring about reform. Our Lee Ji-yoon has more.
Let the public decide whether or not Korea needs an amended constitution. That's what the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy's floor leader Woo Young-gun plans to do next year.
Let's form a special committee at the National Assembly this month to start rewriting the constitution. Whether it be a semi-presidential system or a parliamentary cabinet system, let's discuss all options. Then we should hold a national referendum on the amended constitution during next year's April general elections.
The opposition camp has been criticizing the president for exerting, quote, emperor-like power under the constitution. It wants to revise the law to limit the president's power over nominating members of the cabinet and the constitutional court. The party is also pushing for a system in which the prime minister would take the administrative power, and such power would be guaranteed by the legal system, not by the president. However, the opposition camp's efforts to move forward with the issue faces a tough road ahead. For one, President Park Geun-hye refuses to discuss the issue. She says doing so would only shift the public's attention away from her economic initiatives, which she believes is a priority for the nation right now. The ruling party's new floor leader, Yoo Seung-min, also said Wednesday that they would need more time to discuss the issue because of contradicting views within the party. The current constitution was last revised in 1987 with the end of the country's military rule. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan says a tax hike should be the last resort when it comes to broader welfare for the country. Speaking at the National Assembly Wednesday, Choi said taxes will be raised only with a public consensus if the government fails to finance necessary welfare programs by digging up the underground economy and cutting unnecessary expenses. He went on to say that the country's ruling and opposition parties should first agree on the scope of social welfare before considering how it will be financed. Choi's comments come as the ruling Saenuri Party has slammed President Park Geun-hye's campaign pledge a day earlier to increase welfare without a tax hike. An ongoing theme pushed by the Park Geun-hye administration is building a creative economy. President Park took another step toward realizing this vision today with the launch of a new innovation center that will soon be a hub for the bio and cosmetics industries. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
A practical support center and regional hub that helps startups turn their creative ideas into businesses. That's the idea behind a group of innovation centers that are key to President Park Geun-hye's envisioned creative economy. On Wednesday, President Park opened a new center in Chungcheongbuk-do province that will specialize in bioindustry, cosmetics, and renewable energy. A total of $1.5 billion will be invested into the Center for Research and Development in Bioindustry, Medical, and Renewable Energy Technologies over the next 3 years. Part of the idea behind these centers involves large conglomerates providing smaller firms with know-how and resources. At the Chungcheongbuk-do Center, LG will play that role, with its healthcare arm sharing over 27,000 patents with smaller companies seeking to start businesses. The central province is known for producing 1/5 of the country's cosmetics. President Park pointed to China as an important target market for Korean cosmetics, as China is the world's second largest cosmetics market after the U.S., growing at an average of 10% each year. She also called on women in the region to participate in making a Korean wave of cosmetics overseas. The government will complete the launch of 17 creative economy innovation centers nationwide this year, all customized to foster designated industries in each region. Startups will be provided with R&D and financing support to help ease the difficulties that many smaller companies face when launching a business. 송지선, Arirang News.
And as our Jisun just briefly mentioned, when Chinese tourists come to Korea, one of the very first things they do is to snap up some Korean-made cosmetics products. And this is helping one local cosmetics group tremendously, as its popularity does not exactly stop in China. Our Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
Chinese tourists are vacationing in Korea in ever larger numbers, and they're not going home empty-handed. Cosmetic products are some of the popular items bought by the 6 million Chinese tourists that visited the country last year. The main beneficiaries of all this are Korean cosmetic brands, with some experiencing two-digit growth. In fact, Korean cosmetic giant Amorepacific Group, which owns brands like Seorasu and Innisfree, recorded its best earnings last year. The firm's sales edged up 25% last year from the previous year to more than $3.5 billion. Its operating profit jumped 52% to more than $517 million. And it's not just the tourists behind the company's growth. Its business operations in China have also borne fruit. Amorepacific's sales in China increased 44% last year from the previous year. And to cater to the rising demand there, the firm plans to launch a skincare brand Iope in the Chinese market this year. Meanwhile, its low-end brand Innisfree is expanding into other Asian countries, such as Singapore, Malaysia, and Taiwan, as well as the United States. By increasing its footprint overseas, Amorepacific expects a sales increase of 13% this year to more than $4 billion. This in addition to a 15% increase in operating profits this year from the previous year to $612 million. Due to this, Amorepacific's target stock price has been raised by 10% on Wednesday to nearly $3,000 by High Investment and Securities and Dongbu Securities. Amorepacific was founded in 1954 and is currently led by CEO Seo Young-bae. Last year, it merged with one of the country's largest distribution companies, CJ Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
It may not be long before every gadget in your home is connected to the internet, so it's no wonder an increasing number of IT companies are itching to be the first to get you hooked up. And for tech companies who find the smart home industry out of their wheelhouse, many are acquiring related startup companies to get into the game. Our Shin Se-min explains.
Intel Corporation, the world's largest semiconductor chip maker, has joined the competition for leadership of the fast-growing smart home market with its recent purchase of Lantique, a company that specializes in broadband access and home networking technologies. With the $280 million purchase, Intel is trying to strengthen its connected home and Internet of Things businesses, and it's not alone. It joins global IT companies like Samsung Electronics, Google, and Apple, which are already racing to get a piece of the action. The smart home market is worth over $48 billion as of last year and is expected to reach over $111 billion by the year 2019, with an annual average growth rate of nearly 20%. Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics closed deals in August for smart home device maker SmartThings and QuietSight LLC, a home automation startup and the air conditioner distribution company based in the U.S. Apple CEO Tim Cook said last year that the company had invested in 24 startups related to the smart home business in the past couple years. Google, the world's largest search engine, is also in the game. It bought a few startup companies that specialize in home automation to get a leg up on the fast-moving market. With other European IT companies rushing to enter the promising industry as well, it's only a matter of time before more devices inside the home are connected to each other. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
After months of dropping like a cold stone, global oil prices rebounded significantly this week by jumping nearly 20% in the space of just 4 days. But is this a sustainable turnaround or merely a blip before prices head south again? Hwang Ji-ae has the forecast.
Global crude prices have risen every day for the last 4 days, with prices gaining 19% over the period. That's the biggest advance since January 2009. U.S. benchmark West Texas Intermediate crude oil prices hiked 7% on Tuesday to $53 a barrel, while Brent oil finished up almost 6% at around $58 a barrel. The price gain came as the U.S. dollar tumbled around 1% against a basket of currencies on the same day, bolstering the value of dollar-denominated commodities. The drop was the biggest daily decline since October 2013. The surge in oil prices also came on the back of major energy companies announcing plans to streamline operations as a means to stem plummeting oil prices. BP made the latest move on Tuesday, saying it will slash spending on assets and investments by as much as $6 billion this year. So, is the oil sell-off over? CMC Markets' Michael Houston is skeptical, saying BP and other energy companies might have to prepare for prices to drop again.
It's going to have to keep a lid on costs. It's going to have to be very forensic in terms of future capital expenditure, and it's going to have to get used to essentially a much lower average oil price over the next 18 months to 2 years.
Industry group American Petroleum Institute also says that U.S. crude oil inventories rose more than 6 million barrels last week, fueling concerns about an oversupply. Traders also cite temporary factors like strikes at U.S. refineries that affected the 4-day oil price rally. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
The Islamic State militant group has purportedly carried out the execution of a Jordanian military pilot, as shown in a new video of him being burned alive.
For more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, this footage is profoundly shocking and, of course, if verified, marks a tragic end to this hostage crisis. And in the meantime, Jordan has made good on its promise to avenge that pilot's death.
That's right. The Jordanian government has reportedly taken a drastic response with the execution of 2 prisoners, including the Iraqi female bomber who IS had demanded in a prisoner swap. Outrage and grief over the killing has erupted across the Middle East and the West. This as thousands rallied in the capital Amman in support of the victim's family and the continuing fight against this extremist group. Our Connie Kim reports.
Jordan has executed 2 prisoners in retaliation against Islamic State militants for the horrifically brutal death of pilot Muaz al-Qasasbeh.
At dawn this morning, the criminal Sajida al-Rishawi and the criminal Ziad al-Karboli were executed after being convicted of terrorist acts.
The pair belong to terrorist organizations. The Iraqi woman, Sajida al-Rishawi, was demanded in a prisoner swap for the Jordanian pilot. All this comes after the Islamic State released an extremely graphic video on Tuesday, which purportedly shows the pilot being burned alive inside a cage. With the authenticity of the video confirmed, the international community has quickly condemned the killing and called for stronger efforts to combat terrorism.
Ideology they're operating off of, it's bankrupt. And this organization appears only interested in death and destruction.
The Secretary General urges all governments to strengthen their efforts to combat the scourge of terrorism and extremism within the bounds of their human rights obligations.
Over the past 10 days, ICE militants have publicly executed 6 people, including 2 Japanese hostages, strengthening the resolve of the international community against such brutality. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And shifting to Taiwan, emergency crews there are scrambling to save the victims of a Trans-Asia Airways jet that crashed into a river in the capital city on this Wednesday morning. The latest official update has 19 people confirmed dead, with 24 still unaccounted for. Authorities say the death toll is expected to rise as night falls over the crash site. A total of 58 passengers and crew were on board that plane as it was flying to the Kinmen Islands from Taipei. Beijing later confirmed that over half of them were Chinese tourists. Some survivors wearing life jackets were able to swim clear of the wreckage, while others, including a young child, were taken to shore by rescuers.
As we can see at the scene, the head of the plane is in the water. We're asking the Public Works Department for heavy cranes to be deployed in the hopes that the body of the plane can be lifted up, because at the moment we think a lot of the trapped people are in the head of the plane.
Video footage shows the aircraft clipping a highway bridge shortly after taking off from Taipei's downtown airport in fair weather conditions. Aviation officials said the domestic flight lost contact with controllers minutes before plunging into the water. The cause of the crash is still unknown. And in the United States, the financial ratings agency Standard & Poor's has been fined $1.5 billion by the American government over its alleged role in the 2008 financial crisis. Authorities had charged S&P for issuing fraudulent ratings on mortgage-backed securities between 2004 and 2007. Based on those inflated ratings, investors continued to pour money into these toxic assets, which eventually led to the collapse of the U.S. housing market. The ratings firm announced on Tuesday that it had reached a settlement with the Justice Department to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to affected states and the federal government. However, in the agreement, the firm did not admit to violating any laws. Standard & Poor's is one of the 3 largest rating groups, which combined cover nearly 95% of the global ratings business and nearly 99% of the government securities market. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief. Starting at the King's Cup, South Korea's under-22 squad defeated the Honduras under-20 team by a score of 2-0 for their second straight win. They'll go for a perfect 3-0 record in their final match against Thailand on Saturday. And moving on to the KBL, the first of Wednesday's doubleheader took us to the tip-off in Incheon. Now the ET Land Elephants faced the KCC Aegis, and the Aegis cruised to the lead and held it until the 4th quarter. But that's when Ricardo Powell exploded for 16, or rather 18 of his 35 points, leading ET Land to the comeback win. Meanwhile, the Dongbu Promi took down the Samsung Thunders for the 5th time this season. Dongbu got the back-to-back victory, while Samsung lost their 11th straight game. And over to pro volleyball, there were 2 matches in Suwon, starting with the ladies. The Hyundai ENC Hill State overpowered the GS Caltex Kicks as Polina Rahimova served up a storm with 6 aces. The Hill State earned their 3rd win in a row to retake first on the standings. And off to the men, the KEPCO Vic Storm handily defeated the Uri Card Hanse in straight sets on the backs of Mitar Juric and Chun Gwang-in. They're on a hot streak with 6 straight wins, and they have risen to 3rd on the standings. Finally, over 80 golf caddies have filed a $50 million lawsuit against the PGA Tour, claiming compensation for sponsors' logos featured on their bibs. The federal lawsuit claims that while the tour receives tens of millions of dollars a year from corporate sponsors to advertise on the bibs, the caddies who are allegedly forced to wear them get nothing. The group has the potential to grow to about 1,000 caddies and seek damages worth hundreds of millions of dollars if the PGA Tour is found liable. And that's all I have for now. Your weather's up next. Have a good night.
Hello, I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather outlook. Today is Ipchul here in Korea, a seasonal indicator that marks the beginning of spring, and we got to enjoy early spring-like weather under mostly clear skies. But high levels of fine dust lingered all day, and although the index has dropped here in Seoul, they remain high in other regions. And it looks like more snow and showers expected along the eastern coast of Gangwon-do province with up to 15 centimeters in store. As for the rain, 5 to 20 millimeters will drop on Gyeongsang-buk-do province as well as Jeju. Well, tomorrow is shaping up to be similar to today, but conditions could feel chillier due to strong cold winds. On to the readings, Seoul should reach a high of 5, Daegu 6, Busan hits 7. Meanwhile, Daejeon and Jeju reach 5, Dokdo hits 4. That'll do it for now, but I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Bo-kyung, and that's primetime news for this Wednesday. Thanks for watching. I'm Kang Cheri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.